Today, we are going to tackle a question that pretty much every parent, caregiver, and teacher has asked at some point. Why is it that different kids can respond in completely opposite ways to the exact same situation? Well, the answer lies in the fascinating world of temperament. Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture a toddler classroom. A teacher accidentally drops a metal block, and it clangs loudly on the floor. What happens? One toddler startles, bursts into tears, and runs to the teacher. Another one laughs and immediately tries to make that awesome noise again. And then there's a third kid who just watches from the corner, totally quiet with these wide eyes. So you have the same room, the same exact event, but three totally different reactions. What is going on here?
The answer in a single word is temperament. It's the unique way each of us approaches and reacts to the world around us. You can think of it as our own personal style that's kind of woven into our biology right from the very beginning. It's the foundation for how we experience, well, everything.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with why kids are so different in the first place. Then we'll explore the three main temperament styles that researchers have identified. After that, we'll see how this actually plays out in a real classroom and talk about a super important concept called goodness of fit. And finally, we'll take a quick look at how these early styles can stick with us over the long haul. All right, let's start with the big question. Why are kids so different, right from the get-go? It all comes down to these fundamental, biologically based building blocks of our behavior. So this is really crucial to understand. Temperament isn't something a child learns, and it's not something a parent causes. It is biologically hardwired from the very beginning. Now, it's easy to get this mixed up with personality, but think of it like this. Temperament is the raw clay you're given at birth. Personality is the unique sculpture that gets shaped over time by all your experiences, your culture, and your relationships. But that initial clay, it has a huge influence on how a child behaves and interacts with everyone and everything around them. So to try and make sense of all these differences, researchers came up with some frameworks to categorize these styles, and these really help give us a clearer picture of what's actually going on inside. Researchers like Thomas and Chess identified three general types. First up, you've got the easy or flexible kids. These are the children who are usually pretty happy, have regular sleeping and eating habits, and they adapt to new things pretty smoothly. Then you have the active or feisty child. They might be a bit fussier, their schedules can be all over the place, and their emotional reactions, whether happy or sad, are often really intense. And finally, there's the slow to warm or cautious child. They might seem less active, they kind of hang back in new situations, and they really need a little more time to get comfortable before they decide to join in. Now, if you look at how this breaks down, you'll see that about 40% of kids fall into that easy category. But look at that huge slice of the pie. Over a third of kids are actually a combination of traits that don't fit neatly into any one of these boxes. And that is such a powerful reminder that these are just general guidelines. They're not rigid labels. And that's because these three styles are really just a kind of shorthand. They're actually built from a combination of 9 different underlying traits. And every single one of those traits exists on a spectrum. It's the unique mix of these 9 that creates a child's individual temperament. And this chart here shows you exactly what that looks like. You've got traits like activity level, which can be high or low, or intensity, which ranges from really big reactions to more quiet ones. A single child might be high in activity, low in adaptability, and maybe somewhere in the middle when it comes to mood. It's this unique recipe of all 9 traits that creates their one-of-a-kind style. Okay, this is all great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's dive into a case study to see these traits in action. Let me introduce you to Laura. She's 20 months old and she's new to Miss Neal's childcare program. And Miss Neal is finding it challenging. Laura's napping and eating times are totally unpredictable. And she has this constant driving need to be moving, running, climbing, jumping. And transitions, they're a major battle every single time. So if we map Laura's behavior onto those traits we just talked about, a really clear picture starts to emerge. Her need to run and climb, that's a high activity level. Her unpredictable schedule, that points to irregularity in our biological rhythms, and those long, intense tantrums when it's time to clean up and go inside, that's a classic combo of high intensity and low adaptability. Laura fits the profile of an active or feisty temperament perfectly. So, does this mean Laura is a bad kid, or that Miss Neal is a bad teacher? Absolutely not. The issue here isn't the child, it's the mismatch between the child and her environment. And this brings us to what might be the single most important concept in understanding temperament: goodness of fit. Goodness of fit is what happens when a caregiver's expectations and their style of caring match a child's natural temperament. And the crucial point here is that it's not about changing the child. It's about adapting the environment and the adult's approach to support who that child already is. Just look at Laura's situation. Ms. Neal's program had this really rigid schedule and a big focus on quiet sit-down activities. For Laura, with her high energy and irregularity, that's a clear mismatch. A good fit, on the other hand, would look totally different. It would mean a more flexible schedule, lots of chances for active play, and gentle, patient reminders before transitions to help her with that low adaptability. And this is what it looks like on an emotional level. The goal isn't for the adult to match the child's feisty storm with their own storm. No way. Instead, the caregiver's calm acts like an anchor. We call this co-regulation. The adult's supportive response is what helps the child learn, over time, how to manage those big, intense feelings.
And this is exactly the shift that Miss Neal made. It's brilliant. She started by reflecting on her own temperament. She realized she prefers calm and structure. Then she partnered with Laura's family to really understand her needs from their perspective. From there, she started to adapt the environment, individualize some of the schedules, and offered that patient support during tricky transitions. And the result? It wasn't that Laura changed. It was that the fit changed, and that allowed her to become so much more comfortable and successful in the classroom.
Now, this whole idea isn't just about toddlers. These early temperamental traits continue to influence our development as we grow up. A child's temperament can absolutely shape their friendships in preschool and their behavior in a school classroom. And most importantly, it influences how they develop emotional regulation and social confidence. You know, a feisty child who learns to manage their intensity with a lot of support can grow into a passionate, determined leader. A cautious child who is given time and space can become a really thoughtful, observant problem solver. So let's wrap up with a thought. Instead of seeing a child as difficult or shy, what if we saw them through the lens of temperament, as feisty or cautious? How does just changing that label, based on what we now understand, shift the way we interpret their actions? And that brings us to our final and maybe most important question. How can we shift our focus from trying to change the child and instead focus on changing the environment to create that goodness of fit? Because really, supporting the unique, wonderful way each child is made, that's what this is all about. Thanks for tuning in.